Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Getrude Matshe here in beautiful Wellington. Oh no, I'm in Melbourne, Australia this time. And I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman coming to us from the US. Welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Sure. My name is Sarah Kesty. I am from San Diego, California, and I am 38. I don't understand why that took me a minute. I'm like, how old am I? I feel like I'm still about 25, so that's working for me. And my story is probably similar to some of the stories you've had in terms of I found my calling through kind of a crisis. And it wasn't a crisis of mine, it was a crisis of my students. So I had my original kind of first layer calling to teach and to really impact students. And that's still definitely very much a part of my fabric. But I found the power of what I turned out to specialize in, which is called executive function. And I'll explain that in just a bit. But I found the power of that through a really not scary, but very upsetting situation. So I had bus duty, as teachers do, and I had a student who the bus driver was kicking off the bus again. And this was a situation where the student did not want to leave. It's very hard. They were bused from a different neighborhood, so it wasn't walkable. So he was in a real pickle if he didn't have the bus to go home. And I finally convinced him to come off the bus with me, but sure enough, he jumps off the top step of the bus square onto my foot, which has had 11 reconstructive surgeries and is in constant pain. And so that was not a pleasant introduction to this young man. And then he yelled at me, and we just had a big, ugly mess. And I still had to help him facilitate his ride home. And at that moment, I could have, like a lot of grown-ups had in his life, just said like, forget you, you're a monster, and just sort of ditched him there. And there really wouldn't have been any like job consequence for me. He wasn't my student. But instead, I thought, what is this kid missing? What is he going through? How is his behavior, his very ugly way of asking for help? And so I did a little digging into his history, and I also talked with a couple of his teachers. And it turns out his dad had just been murdered, maybe 6 months before I met him. He was hurting, Getrude. He was just sad, and it was coming out as this out of control, yelling at the bus driver, smacking other kids in the head, jumping on teachers' feet, just this naughtiness, when really it was just this call for help. And layered into that was school was really tricky for him. So he struggled with executive function. And I know I mentioned that earlier, and so I'll kind of go into it right now. It's basically the conductor, the flight control person in your brain. It's your inner secretary that helps you with forward thinking. It helps you with managing. So I kind of see it as a tree with 3 branches. So there's the planning and kind of future skills. So planning, prioritizing, organizing, time management, using a calendar, setting reminders, all that. Okay. And mind you, none of this stuff is really directly taught.
Yes.
So if you don't have it, you're sort of shunned, at least in our culture. And I'm sure around the world, it's pretty similar, but you're never really taught it. And the second branch is kind of that emotional regulation. This is where you pay attention to your own attention levels. Am I on track? Am I not? How do I get back? Am I talking too loud? Am I talking too much? Which I'm probably guilty of right now. It's managing that. Did you have something? I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying it's fascinating how from the outside, children's behavior can be misconstrued. And unless, like you've been working with children long enough to see the symptoms, that there's something else beyond the behavior, most kids are getting dismissed. Most kids aren't getting the attention that they're asking for.
You're exactly right. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts that I can give is that detective perspective. So let's lean into like what's causing this, because I've never met a child who shows up to school and still wants to fail. There's something in them that drives them to show up. And yet, how many times have we accused kids of like, oh, you're not lazy, or oh, you're not trying, oh, you're lazy, oh, you must not care. It's incongruent if you really think about it, but they're very good at masking the actual need.
Wow.
So I'm going to rewind backwards just so I can tell you about executive function, and then tell you the good news about this kid's life.
Yes.
Turns out great. So to rewind, so we've got the future planning, kind of organizing all that. We've got the social emotional, regulating yourself, and then we've got the learning skills. So, and this isn't just in school, this is monitoring your understanding of a new process or mastering a new phone, or if you need to memorize something, like having strategies to keep things in your short-term memory. So it's not just school applicable, but that's executive function. And he was a mess in pretty much all three areas. So instead of condemning him, like you were saying, instead of taking that perspective of you're in trouble because you can't do this, I invited him to my classroom for a binder party. And we popped popcorn, and it was just, I think it was like one of those times where I had just a block of 30 minutes and I borrowed him from his class, and we talked, and he shared about his dad, and we cleaned up his backpack, and I gave him a couple strategies for kind of maintaining the clean backpack. And then pretty soon he was extra early to school, and he would just come in and see if I needed help. And I would help him with kind of the background skills of school, like organizing and self-advocating and how to study. I mean, how many times do we tell kids go study and they don't know how? We don't teach them how, you know? No. So it was a really interesting, eye-opening process of taking the leap to lean into a child who was very much hated me at first. And then, you know, as he grew up, we were at a site where we had up to 8th grade. And he had some big blow-ups with a couple of teachers. So I'm not coming in painting this, I rescued this child on a bumpy road. But he figured it out. He ended up graduating high school. He lives on his own. He's got a car. He's not even 20 yet. He still calls me mom, and he's like 6'4". And he's just a true joy. And he is now using his story to help other people in terms of like, sometimes he does outreach with me for people to understand their ADHD. He volunteered in my classroom when he grew up out of the school, and he is now working to help facilitate life for people on fixed incomes and low income housing. So he is now using his executive function to help others thrive. And it's just, that's one of my most powerful stories, partly because he's one of my favorite humans in the world, but also because it really shows you that if you dare to embrace the challenge and love the child, even when they are doing their best to be highly unlovable, it's worth the journey. What do you think?
You have an incredible story here, a kind of story where, you know, every child needs one educator in their lives that can see them. And it changes the trajectory of somebody's life. You know, this interview is based on the power of education. I had an English teacher very much like you who saw my potential, kind of directed me into the arts. I was really good in public speaking and drama and debate, and now it turned into a profession. Now, I know that you personally have had some struggles yourself, education became a passion for a very specific reason. Let's share that little story as well.
I have a physical disability. And so I learned the experience of trying your best and still feeling like it's not enough, of having, my disabilities was largely invisible. Now you can see because I've had 11 reconstructive surgeries. So if you look closely, there's some scarring there. And my feet are different sizes. And once in a while, my body hurts so much that I can't hide it. So, but when I was younger, I really saw how being isolated and being treated as less than impacted me dramatically. I mean, before I turned 30, there's no way I would have even said physical disability in terms of me. I always positioned myself on the helper end, kind of as like a guard so that I wasn't vulnerable. And I spent so much energy fighting this piece of me that just wanted to be accepted, that I thought I was doing a good job masking it. And once I just kind of opened up, you know what? Nothing bad happened. I shared, and it was kind of like, oh, all right, that must be terrible. And then we all moved on. And it was just that self-acceptance, and that, that's why I wrote the children's book, Everyone Has Something, because we all do have a something. And it was such a gift that I gave to myself. And I wish that I had given it so much earlier, which is why I love working with kids, especially with ADHD, who have invisible struggles and maybe are more misunderstood like I was.
Now, I asked you a question in preparation for this interview, that if you were to write a book, the story of your life, what would the title be? And you said strategize the struggle. So tell me a little bit about what you would share in that book. You seem to have developed some means, some coping mechanisms, some strategies that can help somebody else right now.
Absolutely. So, boy, it's tricky to give kind of a blanket statement because the struggle could show up as anything. But I would just say strategize the struggle to me means that it's okay to feel bad about something. It's okay to not have everything perfect. It's okay to not have all the answers. And then you look at it and you acknowledge, like, hey, this is terrible, and I'm going to find a strategy. And I think that balance is so powerful. So you don't have to be positive all the time. I'm not thankful for my disability. I'm not. I don't like it. I don't want to pass it on to my children. Like, it is not something that I'm like, oh, thank goodness. No, I can't positive spin the situation of chronic pain, but I can live with it. I can own it. And then I can find strategies. Like this morning, I have ulcers on one of my toes just because I can't feel them. And I had to sort of like fold up some bandages and stick it underneath so that it lifted the toe. That's my strategy. I have to strategize to get out of pain so I can move around. And I know your face is like, ugh, that sounds terrible. But it is. And it also, we have strategies. So
I love that. And I love your approach is just to take it one day at a time, one step at a time, and face each thing as it comes. A lot of times people try and solve the whole thing in one sitting, and then the struggle becomes even more challenging. So you seem just to roll with the punches. You wake up in the morning. If something isn't quite right, you find a way to relieve that. It's an excellent metaphor for life as well. I really love the way you live. Now, when I met you, I had put out a query on Harrow, wanting to attract people in the education world who had a passion for education. Why is education so important, do you think, in a child's life?
oh my goodness, it's your ticket to life. It's your ticket to independence. It is the skill set that you will bring to lift others. And that's why we're here. It's, you will find through education, through some of the bumpy moments, who you are, where your natural talents sort of thrive, where you maybe need to step on the gas a little bit harder because it's not as naturally gifted in your life. And that's not a good or a bad thing. It is,
It is
but
what it is.
yeah, but it's I think sometimes kids resent that you, and it is a little bit of a tricky thing because we expect kids to be good at everything. You
Mhm.
know, like you must be good at PE, run the mile under a certain amount of time, um, master this math concept, write a 12-page paper, and oh, by the way, explain this science concept. Like that breadth is really not expected beyond school.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
think sometimes that level of mastery without the scaffolding supports is really frustrating
Yeah.
for a lot of kids. But I think the power in education is that we're providing you a full menu so that when you're older, you are empowered to choose.
Oh,
So
I
if you if you opt out right now because something just isn't naturally attractive, or you had a teacher that you didn't jive with or something, you were limiting your own future menu, which
Mhm.
is what we don't want. So I think that's important for kids to remember if they're struggling in school.
Now, this weekend, I put out a special show. The United Nations is urging the Zimbabwean government to stop child marriage. There is a 14-year-old little girl who died a couple of weeks ago in Zimbabwe. During childbirth, this child came from a religious sect where kids are married off below the age of 18. You know, for me, it's child abuse. It is rape. We are a group of women from Zimbabwe who are coming together, trying to advocate for this to change in our country. And again, for me, it goes back to education. If that little girl's mother was educated, she would have taken a stance not to allow her daughter to be married off at the age of 13. The women who are in these cults, religions, communities, they don't even know what their rights are because they were married off so early. They just accept that that's the way life is. I know that you live in the United States, a completely different environment. What do you think we can do as women around the world to help stop some of these practices around giving children rights to just grow up and be little children?
Wow, that's a powerful and important question. And I don't want to misconstrue my idea that you go day to day and you just face the challenges, because some of the challenges we face are unacceptable.
Mhm.
So I don't mean to spin it that, happiness is your choice and you get to make your life whatever it is. Sometimes you do need outside help. So I
Mm.
hope that that's not coming across that way.
No.
Um, as far as helping each other, I mean, we need to connect. We need to connect because we're stronger together. We need to lift other women instead of being in silly competition with them. And we need to really kind of once in a while do a values audit. Am I matching up with what I believe in? Am I doing enough with what I have to match the impact I want? And it could be local, it could be connecting globally like we are.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, just I know we talked a little bit earlier too about, like, don't be afraid to start small and don't be
Yes.
afraid to think big,
Mhm.
but don't let your own thought wheel turn so much that you end up paralyzed and you don't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you remember when we met the first time, I asked you to help me reach more educators. I think, like you said, if we connect, if we collaborate with people from all over the world, the more voices that are sharing this story, the more pressure will be put on our government to bring about change. Now, I want to take you back to that younger you, the young woman who was in the struggle, trying to get her life together. If somebody could have given you three nuggets of wisdom about life, what would you have wanted somebody to say to you at that point, based on what life has taught you to this point now?
So I'll tell you, people say like your darkest moment was when I might be emotional. Like a dark moment. Mine was the bright light of waking up after a foot surgery and realizing that I'd rather be dead.
Mm.
And at that time, I wished someone would have coached me through sharing that I was struggling so that I had the rehearsal of like, oh, this is okay. And that nothing bad would happen if you shared it. Cause I think that would be really like a powerful way to own it. I'm so sorry.
No, it's good that you're sharing so openly, authentically. So thank
I
you
hope
for
so.
that.
I hope it helps because I feel like a total goof right now. But um yeah, I wish that I had maybe some frameworks for speaking, for sharing it so that I didn't have to reach back into my brain. It was just sort of there.
Yeah.
I wish that someone had said, like it's okay to explore different ways to address your disability and to connect with other people. I mean, I was in such denial. I didn't know anyone else who had my disability until, other than my family, until my 20s.
Mm.
And I remember the moment that I went to a support group and I saw that one of the ladies was married, and it actually shocked me because I had constructed this story in my brain about no one's ever going to love you. And I
Oh.
so deeply embedded it into who I was that I didn't realize I really felt it until I felt that surprise and thought, oh, wow. It
Mm.
really, it runs deep when I was part of like a study growing up. And so medical students would come in and they'd talk about me in front of me. And it was humiliating and demoralizing. And no one ever explained it to me. They just used huge words about what was wrong with me and never treated me like a human. And so like a lot of my own perception came from that. So I wish that people had seen the human in me and kind of helped me heal from that little girl. So I would say to people in terms of like, if you're struggling right now, if there's a piece of your life that you're ashamed of or having a hard time embracing, that it doesn't have to be all, you don't have to love yourself overnight. Maybe just find one thing that you kind of like
Yes.
and then add on to the list every day.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Just waking up and saying my eyes are working, I can see. And I think when we go back to gratitude, the things that we have, and focus on what we have and not what we don't have, internally things can feel a little bit better. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So now let me take you into your future. If time was an illusion and I could have a conversation with 100-year-old you, and you're sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your grandchildren and your children, and you are going to have a conversation with that amazing woman who's lived this fantastic life and has impacted on so many children's lives, what would you say to her based on how you're living your life right now?
Oh, what would I say to future me? Yeah.
Yes.
Um, oh boy, that's an excellent question too. I would say like, look what you did when you got out of your own way.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And she's already done it. You are already on that road. I do this little exercise where if I am struggling with something I'm working on, I go into my meditative state and I have conversations with the future me. Like, this project I'm working on now is huge. The Her Story movement is huge. And the days when I just want to give up, but I know that this seed was planted in me because I have the ability to bring it into life. I know I have the ability to connect millions of people around this movement. And so I just have conversations with her every once in a while. And I'll say, how did we do it? And then some mornings I will wake up with clear guidance on what the next step is. It's the same way that I met you. I thought, okay, I need to connect with more educators. I need to find more people who have a passion for children. Those are the people I need in my camp. Those are the people who should be in my tribe. And now we're having this conversation with you. You're going to be one of our speakers at our next online summit. It's just such an honor to have you here, Sarah. It means a lot to me. And for me, it's every woman who's stepping up and saying, yes, I see the vision, I see the mission, I want to be a part of it. Thank you so, so much for saying yes.
Absolutely. I feel the yes. It's not just a saying it. I'm all in. I think that this is so powerful, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with women around the world who want to affect positive change like you were talking about in Zimbabwe and beyond.
Thank you. So I have added Sarah's details in the chat on Facebook, on YouTube. If you are a parent and you have a child who's needing help, Sarah is available online. You know, the world is flat right now because of the internet. It doesn't matter what country you're in, you can reach out to her. She has some amazing strategies to help parents right now. And she will be speaking and running a workshop at our next online summit as well. So if you haven't registered to attend, please go onto our website, theherstorycircle.com. Sarah, thank you again for this interview. I'm looking forward to playing with you and having fun with you and having you in our play box. And thank you to everybody who tuned in this morning. I told you we have some amazing women who are so full of life, positivity, ideas, strategies that can help all of us in our day-to-day lives. Tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another fascinating woman. Thank you, Sarah. Have a fantastic day, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.